On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I'm chatting with Mary Bemis, the founder of Reprise Activewear, a brand that's shaking up the world of leggings and loungewear by saying goodbye to plastic and hello to plants. After leaving her career in finance, Mary discovered her closet was full of polyester and realized most of us are unknowingly wearing plastic, especially in our workout clothes. That revelation sparked a mission to create activewear that's better for our bodies and the planet. In this episode, we talk about her journey launching a brand with no fashion background, the truth about recycled clothing, and why non-toxic fabrics are the future of fashion. If you've ever wondered if what your clothes are made of really matter, this one's for you. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. I am so excited to welcome to the show today, Mary Bemis, the founder of Reprise Activewear. And I'll just let you guys know, I fully stalked her online. I was introduced to the brand through Instagram because Instagram knows me so well. And then I was all through their social media. And then, of course, I reached out to them on DM and I'm like, please be on the podcast. I was totally fangirling. And then finally, Mary did respond. It was like, yes, I would love to. And now here we are. So, Mary, thank you so much for responding to me and fulfilling my need for validation, because when I saw your brand, I was like, oh, this speaks to me because, as my audience knows, I am a runner of okay, so I've been running now for like 15 years, but before that, always workout girl since the 80s. I am that old. And I was shocked that my workout gear could potentially be causing me more harm than good. And this is a conversation, as you know, that has become more to the forefront of our, culture and our awareness in the last couple of years. But you really jumped on this a long time ago. So, girl, let's talk about you and this Reprise Activewear. How did you know that working out was so bad for us?
Yeah, well, thank you for that intro. That's amazing. I feel so lucky that Instagram introduced us and that you reached out. It's always really fun to get the opportunity to share more about what we're doing in our story. So I'm super excited for this conversation today. So thank you for that. But I'm happy to give a quick intro into how the initial idea came about. We did just hit 7 years in business. We celebrated our seventh birthday in May. So yeah, we've been doing this for a while and it's been really interesting to see the landscape shift. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more over this whole session. But I had originally been sort of a fun story I love to share that I was going through, actually, I moved apartments in New York to a much smaller apartment. If you're in any city living, small studios and limited closet space. And I was trying to make some money and sell stuff to make room in my closet. And I was hoping I was selling a closet full of, cashmere and silk and things that actually had value. And I was selling on Poshmark and I was being really descriptive of everything I was selling. And I found myself writing polyester over and over again. And I don't have a background in fashion. I didn't know what that was, but it just was interesting to me because the feeling of wool or the feeling of silk. And this was in everything I owned, from sweaters to leggings to even some of my denim. And I just Googled it and I was really shocked to learn that it was essentially a plastic. And I felt that as I was, eating healthier and switching to cleaner beauty and personal care supplies, I was still wearing stuff that, for me, the original mission was much more of an environmental mission of, plastic then comes from oil and drilling and then the microplastics issue. But happy to share more. We really switched to both environmental and the human health impact with some recent news and all the information coming out around chemicals and clothing as well. So there's a lot there to dive into more, but it really was sort of an innocent activity turned into like a, wormhole. You can't stop researching and really feeling passionate about wanting to create something better from there.
Well, you know what? I'm actually glad that you brought up that backstory because you mentioned a couple fabrics in there and you mentioned things like cashmere and wool and silk and things like that. So now, as a lifestyle vegan, let me tell you something. I have also gone through a huge education process of learning what it actually means to wear
Hmm.
cashmere, wool, silk, and things like that
Hmm.
and the horrors of that industry itself. So when the conversation then turned to activewear in the last couple of years about these microplastics, I
Hmm.
was again sitting there saying, "Oh God, what now? What exactly are we supposed to wear? I don't want to wear
Hmm.
wool. I don't want to wear cashmere. I don't want to wear silk. Well, now I shouldn't be wearing my activewear. Like we're all naked, right? No, okay, there's organic cotton and that has its own thing. But it does become like I feel like an overwhelm for the consumers of where you
Totally.
really don't know where you should be, I think, investing your consumer dollars and you don't really know what's good for you. So, you mentioned you had started like doing this reseller business. How did you then take that idea to you wanted to actually launch your own activewear, brand? Because that's a huge leap.
Yeah.
That's not easy. I don't have to tell you anything. So how did you then make the connection between, well, I'm doing a reselling and now I want to actually start my own line because you didn't come from a background in fashion. So there's a huge learning curve. So tell me a little bit about how that started for you.
Yeah, great question because it is sort of a big jump to go from learning to starting a business. Personally, it was sort of I was making a career transition. It was sort of right timing. I was working in investment banking before and I just was really burned out and I actually quit without anything lined up. I had a few months saved. And so I really was taking those months to research and say, if this is what I thought I wanted to do, and it really turned out it wasn't, what if I could, really do anything I wanted to, what would it be? So I was in the mindset of like, I'm ready to career shift. I'm looking to learn something new, realizing I've always grown up in a very environmentally minded household. And so I was the kid running around turning lights off that weren't being used and turning down the heat at night. And so just to save energy. So I knew I wanted to do something in the sustainability realm. And then this discovery in the fashion world really led me to becoming really passionate about sustainable fashion. I watched a lot of documentaries, and I think I recognized that the issue of plastics in fashion is the most prevalent in activewear. So right now, 60% of clothing is made with a plastic-based fiber, whether that's polyester or nylon, but it's closer to 95% in activewear. And I've always been a very active person. I've played every sport possible at some point, probably. And I love to work out like you. And I felt that, this is something that I live in as well. I'm uncovering this problem. I'm in sort of this mindset of ready for a new career. I felt passionate about this business idea, and I actually started taking night classes at the Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York just to start to learn a bit more before really diving into creating the business. So they had a really amazing non-credit certificate program specifically for sustainable design entrepreneurs. So I was going probably 3 or 4 nights a week from 6 to 9 p.m., learning everything from sourcing to manufacturing to sustainable business marketing, legal basics, everything you really need to start a business. And then from there, launched with a Kickstarter campaign. So there was a lot of research before the business, but it was fun to get a chance to meet other people, workshop the idea, learn a bit more, while kind of deciding whether or not I was ready to go all in and start the business.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so I didn't even know that part about you, that you did that whole course and education series. Because I do feel like a lot of times Google is our best friend and our worst enemy because sometimes they can make it seem like it's so easy to do stuff and then you don't really do the research of like, well, what does it mean to run a business? And it is a big endeavor. It does involve planning and strategy. And if we don't do that from the beginning, what do you really have? So I could see the intention within your brand. Once I was all through your website, I read everything you guys had written about, not only your product lines, but really the intention behind it. I said, wow, this woman has really thought about this. Like, this was not just suddenly like, I'm going to have an activewear brand because it's so trendy and it'll do good on Instagram, which it does. So,
Totally.
with that said, then when you launched your Kickstarter, were you looking at Kickstarter as like maybe as like a testing your idea? area. Is that what you were doing with Kickstarter?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to the classes at the Fashion Institute of Technology, there was also a program, and I don't think she's running it anymore, but it was called Factory 45. And it was complementary to the FIT products, and her whole mission was really helping people launch sustainable fashion brands, small, usually made in the US, on crowdfunding campaigns. She had done it. And at the time had the highest funded fashion project with this really cool travel scarf. And so she really also helped kind of lay out that, like, here's what you say to suppliers, because there's so much more. I jumped in very, very naively, and learning a lot about, yeah, exactly what you say, what pricing you should do, like kind of how to build that audience. And so, absolutely, the Kickstarter was really meant to be sort of like a testing the waters. Like, do people really want this? Does the messaging resonate? And also, starting a business is expensive. It requires a lot of upfront capital, especially fashion. You have to buy the inventory ahead of time. So it allowed us to do pre-orders. So people were purchasing the items, and then I was able to use the funds from the Kickstarter to place the order with the factory. So it also helped from like a financial standpoint of having the money to start the business. And then build the audience too. People want to learn about the business. They want to see what's going on. They want to understand kind of how products are made. And it was really fun to get to share that with all the people who supported us early on. And some of them have stayed customers, which is really cool to have over 7 years, see the brand evolve. It's a totally different brand from the Kickstarter days, but that's the fun part too. With like slow growth, you really get a chance to kind of learn and develop as the business and the need grows.
Yeah, well, you're definitely in the right niche. I mean, we call it the athleisure wear industry, but it's really lifestyle at this point because people do, you use the clothes for workouts, you use it to kind of like live in, just to, everyday wear. I mean, I myself, I have like literally three drawers that are nothing but what I call like my workout to life kind of program, right? So,
Mhm.
when you were starting out, were you intentionally focusing on activewear or were you still testing the waters about like what could this look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were intentionally targeting activewear. I felt like the again, the biggest problem existed in truly that the activewear space. At the time when I started, and you had asked about materials before, and I love this is a part I really love to talk about as well. The time I started, the like sustainable activewear fabric of choice was recycled polyester. And it definitely was a step in the right direction from like a virgin polyester, but I felt that it's still plastic. It's still shedding microplastics when you're washing and wearing it. And so I was very dedicated to using natural fibers. So for just like a quick background, as you mentioned, there's sort of two groups of natural fibers. You have animal-based fibers, which would be a wool or silk, or you have plant-based natural fibers, which would be a linen, a cotton, hemp. And we use Tencel. We do have some products that are organic cotton as well, but we use Tencel, which is similar to bamboo, but a much cleaner process. So bamboo actually requires quite a bit of chemicals to break down. And Tencel is certified free of pesticides. It's done in a really clean, regenerative way, and it carries Ecotech certification, which is like the highest standard of clean on your skin. So we want to make sure the intentionality behind like materials and what we're doing in the sustainability mission was always, as much natural fiber as possible, with knowing you need a small bit of spandex for activewear. So sourcing was a whole huge piece of starting the business, and we were very, very intentional there. The goal was to do activewear, and we still sell and market the pieces as activewear. But what's been really interesting to see is the fabrication is a lot more of that leisure feeling. It's sort of a cottony feel. And so it's sort of adapted into this more like athleisure lifestyle style brand because of the material. And we did introduce a really exciting kind of new high performance line because people were like, we love your products, but we're wearing them more for like every day or travel and wanting something that's more high performance. And that's, I think, still a huge opportunity to find natural fibers that have that same level of like high performance that a synthetic fabric has. But we have adapted to the use case based on a lot of feedback from customers. So started very active focus, and we've kind of adapted over the years based on just feedback and what the fabric lends itself best, like the styles that it lends itself best to.
Well, if television or streaming has taught us anything, is you basically have to be ready for the zombie apocalypse every day. So all of my clothes I choose on the basis of is this the day I need to run for my life? And I'm sure a lot of people are also like, well, maybe not that, but it's like, you know what? Comfort, functionality, it goes a long way. And, going back to what you said about these microplastics, I've been really shocked in just my research and reading, even over the last month, about how much fibers interact with our bodies, which I just
Mhm.
never gave a thought to. That, your actual sweat and just, your daily, I guess, what do you call it? Your body, your skin shedding. I don't know how to
Mhm.
put it. Your body just interacting with the fabrics, like it changes the chemical compound and it does leach and things like that. So, I noticed that, within your own messaging, you've changed your messaging over the years. So was that specifically because you have learned more or because you're trying to educate the public? Or, what is going into that? Because, when you hear the words like Tencel, people don't know what that means or why it's important to them. So, how are you using education really to get that message across?
Yeah, this I also love to share and talk about because it's been a really interesting journey and a lot has changed over 7 years. The core products, the mission really hasn't, but how we've explained it and educated people. When I first launched, the idea was, microplastic free. But 7 or 8 years ago, microplastics weren't really a hot topic. And so a lot of people were confused. And there's this, I think sometimes a problem with sustainability marketing is I was going really the like large, big picture sustainability mission. Microplastics are this huge thing. They're in our water. And customers, when I would go to pop-ups and test the messaging, were interested. Of course, they want to protect the planet, but it wasn't personal enough. And so it wasn't enough of a reason to buy. And then we went with more of the comfort messaging. People were like, I just love these leggings because they're really, really comfortable. So we switched a bit of the messaging away from sustainability towards comfort. And again, there's a bunch of other brands out there. Comfort wasn't like our key differentiator. We then tried to test out plant-based activewear, which we still use today. But it was really funny because, again, this was probably now like we're moving along the time, like 6 years ago. And the knowledge and education, again, there's a lot of pressure on consumers, I feel like, to understand fabrics and what's good and what's not and what's in them. And I would go to trade shows and I would say it and they were like, you can make clothing from plants. And it was such an interesting realization that we're so disconnected from the fashion supply chain these days, or were so more. I think people are learning a lot more now. But I'm like, cotton has existed for thousands of years. So yes, you definitely can. We're not doing anything like that hasn't, ever been done before, but it was a really interesting branding that got people talking. But what really shifted the messaging was about 2 years ago, the Center for Environmental Health did a study and tested a bunch of other activewear brands and found high levels of BPA and PFAs in them. BPA is without getting too technical, a chemical agent to soften plastic. So it really helps the leggings become soft and stretchy. But it is linked to be an endocrine disruptor and has been linked to like breast cancer and other cardiovascular issues. So it is a chemical you definitely don't want to be wearing, especially when you're sweating. And so with the news of that, people really started to pay attention to the issue of polyester in clothing, less from an environmental standpoint and more from a human health perspective. So that's when our branding really shifted to more of the non-toxic language, and we get certifications to back this up and make sure that the claims that we make are all very valid. But it's interesting because, like I said, it's the same product and mission the whole time, but it went from truly an environmental focused on plastic to more of a still environmental but human health mission as well, just with all this new research. So the timing has been it's been great to have this news come out. And we're always trying to figure out how to educate and support rather than like scare people as well. Like I always want to be seen as a brand that we're here to help and provide better solutions. There's a lot of information. There's also a lot of misinformation, and I don't want to, scare people too much. Like you said, you're like, there's always some news coming out that's causing you to like re-research or rechange your product. So, there will probably be continue more information and new news out there, but we're trying to also, yeah, share as much as we can so that people feel like they have a safe and trusted resource.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too? It's like sometimes I think we get so involved in our own business and our own messaging that at some point we feel like, oh, I'm repeating the same stuff and people already know that. But what we have to understand is it's always new to someone. And the message does have to be repeated because you forget, you move on, and the wording changes. So I do think it's important that even for as many times if we as we've said things like, well, it's better for the planet or the environment or it's BPA or it's this or that, like you have to keep saying that because it's always new to someone. I mean, like for myself, I have learned so much through this podcast. We're going on in August, it'll be a 1 year anniversary for us. And
Amazing.
the things I've learned from talking to business owners like you, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Other people didn't know that. That is fascinating to me. And here we are, just having this great conversation now where it's, not only education, but it's like I feel better. I feel like we're going in a better direction. Because
Yeah.
before this podcast, I really did have the feeling like, man, we are going to hell in a handbasket. But at least now that handbasket is biodegradable. So speaking of which, I did read that you're actually launching a biodegradable high performance line. Is that correct?
Yeah, we launched it last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do I tell me a little bit about that? Like, so when you were deciding, where you guys had gone with the company, what then brought you to we now need to go into biodegradable? And is it only the high performance line now that is
Yeah.
biodegradable, or you're moving towards everything being biodegradable?
Yeah, so technically everything is biodegradable by nature of being a natural fiber. The issue comes in where we have a small bit of spandex. So typically they say if it's less than 5%, it's a small enough amount that it can be fully considered industrially biodegradable. We have 7%, which was the smallest amount I've been able to get without still having losing any kind of performance. So the tensile piece would be biodegradable, but the bit of spandex then would be left over. But the organic cotton t-shirts, organic cotton shorts, things like that, fully biodegradable. The new performance line has been a really interesting development for the brand. So as I mentioned, customers were loving the leggings, but choosing not less to wear them for like a high intensity workout, like a run or anything, and really like loving them for yoga, travel, everyday errands, like more low impact activities. And I felt that my personal background is a much more, I used to box competitively and I love like high performance training. And so I really also personally wanted something that I could I was wearing the stuff before to train in, but I wanted something that felt a little bit more of that high performance feeling. A lot of people were expecting more of that kind of synthetic feel with a legging that we're used to with like an Aloe or a Lululemon. So um, we worked with our factory in Portugal. We have this amazing factory. The mill is actually women owned and one of the first B Corp certified factories in Europe. And they had developed this really incredible, it's Ecotech certified. So again, carries that same non-toxic certification that it's clean for your skin. And it's a fully biodegradable, it is a synthetic. It's not an oil-based synthetic, so it's not like a traditional polyester, it's carbon-based. But it is a bit of, it's a different, it's not a plant-based fabric. So we kind of had to market this one differently. But it carries that same like fully non-toxic, fully biodegradable, and does feel it's got that beautiful sheen that I think aloe leggings have. And I'm always looking for, I love material innovation. I go to fabric trade shows all the time. And if there happens to be, another plant-based type of synthetic feel fabric, of course, I would love to go again back more in that direction. But I've learned over the years from advisors that sometimes you have to do what's best for like business and what customers are asking for and just be incredibly transparent about here's what the material is, here's where it's great, here's where maybe it falls short because there's no perfect material, and here's where we're looking to go, and just be super honest about kind of materials used. So I love it. I think it's amazing, but I also could love to continue to move more in that direction of like completely plant-based, completely even spandex. I would love to eventually be able to say like there's a plant-based spandex and we can move away from traditional spandex, but right now that just doesn't exist, especially for small brands. So yeah, it's a really exciting product. It's fun to get to develop and try new things. And so far it's been really well received too, to have now multiple options for people depending on what their preferences are.
Yeah, you know what? I remember when I was younger and we would hear the word spandex and we're like, "Oh my God, it has spandex in it." And it sounded very fancy and very cool. And we wanted all of our clothes to have spandex in it. This was the 80s, by the way. And now that we've like kind of moved on and learned, we're like, "Oh yeah, maybe that's not such a great thing." But still spandex sounds very sexy. So, we need to have that same reaction to all these new organic good for you fibers as we did when we first came out with these, performance kind of clothes, right? Because, back in the day, it was just like, oh, you just wear your cotton clothes and you sweat in them and that was it. And then it became, no, everything has to be performance clothes. So, it's very sexy, the whole conversation. And I can see why when you go to these shows that you're really attracted to all these new fabrics, because I would be the same way. I would just be like, ooh, what is going on over here? Because the progression is so interesting. But I just
Yeah.
want to say real quickly, in case anybody missed it, Mary was a boxer. What? You were
Yeah.
boxing? Wait, so before you launched the clothing line, you were boxing. Now, were you doing the actual like boxing another partner, getting hit kind of boxing?
Yeah, it was actually in the last like couple of years. It was a sport I found during the pandemic. I'd always trained and taken classes before, but I found a really amazing community of people who were working out outside and training, and it was mostly women, and I felt really like just it was a great group of people, and I felt really welcomed in, and they had wanted to learn sparring, and I was like, that sounds cool. I want to do that too, and so over the next like couple of years, or I think it was like a year or two. I learned sparring and then I just have the personality. I mean, that's I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. If you're gonna learn something, you kind of want to take it to the next level. And so I was like, I want to do a fight. And then I ended up doing 7 fights over the course of a year, all over New York City. And to be honest, I miss it and I may still do one in the future, but kind of had to take a step back and like focus on the as the business is growing a lot. But it was fun. I would get to like test out the product and I competed in it. So really the high performance stuff, if you can get through a boxing fight, a boxing fight in it. But yeah, it was really interesting to find a new sport and hobby, especially in my like early 30s, of something like very different I didn't expect to get into. But it's a great workout and a fun outlet for me, and I've been a really great community as well.
So I will now refer to you as my friend Mary, the former boxer. It's like, and in business negotiations, you do not want to mess with this woman. She will literally take you down. But I caught that and I just thought it was so funny. I did some boxing in, my various workouts. I was always like, oh, I got really into boxing at one point, but it was always
Oh,
bag
cool.
boxing. And when I would
Yeah.
tell people, oh, I box, and then I would say, oh, it's bag boxing, they're like, you're not a real boxer. So I'm like, I guess unless someone, actually hits me in the face at some point, I am not a real boxer. So
No,
I don't
you
know.
could be a real
We might
boxer
have
if
to
you want
go and
to.
go to like a sparring class, you and I, when you are in LA next time, so you can show me the actual ropes on that. But that's a
Always
different
happy to.
conversation. I want to backtrack just a little bit because we had mentioned at the beginning that you initially launched through the Kickstarter campaign to get you going. What was the next step after that? After you launched through Kickstarter, you had kind of proof of concept, you had people interested, you obviously have to get the product made. So did
Mhm.
you learn about how to, reach out and get in touch with manufacturers through that class you talked about? Or what was that journey like to actually go from concept to, realization? And where did the design come in?
Yeah, all great questions. So during the development process, I started the course was called Factory 45 in April and we launched the following April. So it took about a year of development. And during that time I was securing like the fabric and the sourcing, all the sourcing was done, the manufacturing partners, all of that was being done at the same time. So it was actually sort of amazing timing. I was working at this advertising job in Midtown, and Midtown is also where a lot of the garment district and the factories are in New York. So I would sneak out during my lunch break and go visit them and check on the samples. Design wise, I kept it pretty simple, and if you look at our site, the designs are fairly simple. Although coming this holiday, we have some really exciting, finally new a little bit more like fashion forward and athletic styles. But I kept it really simple. I don't sketch and I'm not a like traditional creative. So I just brought samples of products I love from other brands and said, keep the length of these ones, or I like the waistband of this style, the sports bra that fits from this brand. And we were just really inspired by other brands, which was a great way to kind of entry level products until we really, again, saw what worked for our customers and our fabrics. So that was getting the patterns and styles made. The sourcing I went to, there's a large fabric trade show that happens twice a year in New York called Tex World, and talked to everyone I possibly could there until we could find. I knew I wanted to work with Tencel for the reasons I mentioned. It was clean. It's a little bit more performance forward than an organic cotton. It feels kind of naturally cool to the touch. It's very, very absorbent, so it wicks sweat really quickly. And it's resistant naturally to odor and bacteria, so it doesn't smell over time. Sometimes you have old polyester stuff that starts to kind of smell. So I knew I wanted Tencel, and we went back and forth with so many people on finding something that was opaque enough for a legging, and that also had a lot of times it was blended with a polyester, and I was very, very set on like no plastic except for the small bit of spandex that's needed. Secured the sourcing. I was able to get small amounts of fabric to sample with, but I couldn't buy the bulk fabric because I didn't have the money from the Kickstarter yet, but at least had the supply chain figured out. The samples were made. And so when we launched the Kickstarter, I knew what all needed to be ordered and the steps of everything. I just needed the money. And so as soon as the Kickstarter ended, we raised just under $20,000 in that month of pre-orders. And so then I, called the fabric and said, I have the money, like go ahead and make the fabric. The fashion supply chain is fairly long. They take like 6 to 8 weeks for fabric to be made, and then 6 to 8 weeks for the manufacturing. And I manufactured in New York to start because it was really great. I could take the 6 train up and go to the South Bronx and see all the whole thing and really learn how it was done. And then we were just, communicated with all the people who had pre-ordered. This is sort of what to expect. You're going to get the products by the end of the year. And we were able to make slightly more than what was ordered with the pre-order, with a little bit of the margin. We gave discounts on the Kickstarter, but that was how I kind of then had inventory to continue to sell. And then we would just, whenever we sold through stuff and had enough money, we would place another order. So the growth was very slow at the beginning because it really required kind of like, selling through everything, having enough money for the next order. So there were a lot of like long out of stock periods, but I'm a big proponent. I'm happy to talk more about this, about slow and sustainable growth, and really making sure you're, making the right products, really understanding the business. There were a lot of times where we tested out a new style or a color, and it maybe didn't work as well as I wanted. And you learn a lot about sort of what works and what doesn't work, and by trial and error. But I think having that slow growth, bootstrapping it, as well as you can, and not taking on, external investment if you don't need it, really has allowed us to learn without, I think, too much pressure, and really grow the business in a very like sustainable and intentional way.
Absolutely. And I'm like I said, just looking at your website, I can see it's done very intentional. You're there with a mission. It's all through your wording, it's all through your copy, which I love. And you've even gone, the extra step where you're getting certified and making sure that your products are, created in a very fair, sustainable way, insofar as like the people that are creating them, that, they are being fairly compensated. And I did see that you're part of the 1% for the planet, which I absolutely love. So tell me a little bit why, that extra step is so important for you, because that takes time and money on your side. Like that's not free. People don't understand that. When you get certified, in a lot of ways, you have to pay for them to certify you, and then it's an ongoing thing. So tell me a little bit about, why that is important to you now, why that's going to be important, like for the future of the company.
Yeah, I think, it's always been important to me personally. Like this is the brand is an extension of myself. I've always seen it. Like I'm very, very invested in the mission of the brand, and it's something I've been building for the past 7 years. So I think it felt natural to support some of these causes just because I would want to support them personally. So to have that embedded in the brand just kind of comes a bit more naturally. I also come from a data and analytics background, and so for me, certifications are a way to prove that the things are. I think sustainability has is a bit overused, and it's a very vague term. It just means, la long lasting, basically. And so many brands, I mean, these days every brand could claim sustainability from some way or the other, whether it's materials, whether it's smaller production runs, whether it's locally made, whether it's, even just the thought of, I've seen some that are like thoughtfully made, and I'm like, that could mean anything. So I've always felt really passionate too about kind of using data to back up your claims. Just again, my professional background, and so the certifications to me allowed us to enable and unlock that trust with the customer that we really are. It when you say even not toxic now, like what does that mean? What toxins are you free of? There's thousands of them. So getting again aligning with the Ecotech certification, which is the cleanest one, making sure that we're working with only lensing Tencel, which ensures all of the claims that we made are backed. They carry that trademark. Otherwise, it's generic. You don't know really what is happening in the supply chain. And then same thing if we use organic products, making sure it's got certified. Those kinds of things. Again, just more of my personal background and mission. But I also think I've seen that other brands that I support and shop with, I feel better about them when I know that there's real validity to the claims that they're making, because I tend to think that some of these things become trendy and overused, and I don't really know what they really mean anymore. And it's hard to prove them unless you have that support from a certification partner.
It's totally true. And I do believe, consumers want to make the right choice in most cases. I for one, do. But, I don't want to feel like every single time I have to purchase one product that I have to spend hours and hours researching. Well, are they really? Is it this? Is it that? Again, mentioning, I live a vegan lifestyle. I go on these websites now, everybody's plant-based, right? Well, then
Yeah.
I have to do a deeper dive. I'm like, does that really mean that it's totally vegan product or what is it? So, these
Yeah.
certifications I think are very helpful to do the research for us, Domo. So you're like, great, 1% for the planet. I know what that means. That checks that box for me. So I think it's very smart that, you guys are involved in that. And then also that messaging is on your website so people can easily see that. Because again, if there's too many hurdles, people will just take the easy way out or they won't make any decision and they'll just kind of move on. So we
Yeah.
definitely, I'm sure you've learned that. And speaking of learning, tell me, give me two things here. First, I want to know what was one challenge that you had along the way that was, really learned some, and what was a success maybe that was a surprise or just a huge win for you because it took a lot to get there.
Oh gosh.
Let's start with
So
the
many
challenge
over the
first, so
years.
we'll end on the fun success.
Okay, that's a good. My gosh, we've been through such unprecedented times building the business. So the challenge one is really interesting. I'm thinking, the pandemic, where all of the factories shut down, to the very current supply chain, or sorry, tariff tariff war. We are lucky that we source from Portugal, and I think right now the rate is 10%, but it went from 20 to 10 to at one point the EU was at 50%. I don't think that was ever enacted, but it's been a it's been an interesting time to be building a small business. But one of the biggest challenges has really been finding a factory partner. I mentioned that the one we've worked with for a while in the Bronx, and they've been amazing. They really, there's nothing wrong there. I tried to switch a few times to work with other factories. I would meet someone and they had a connection, and I loved the idea of working with another local factory. And there was one time where I switched and we tried to work again with this other factory for one run. And unfortunately, because they were new, they weren't very well funded, and they were working on a order for us. And I kept checking in for timing, and timing kept going past, and all of a sudden, it was like a month after they were supposed to deliver it to us, and I found out that they hadn't done anything but cut the fabric yet. And unfortunately, I think they just were very like underfunded. A lot of their employees were leaving, and I actually ended up having to go to, it was like the middle of New Jersey, and see the fabric, and I just picked up all of the pieces and was like, I'm sorry, this just isn't going to work. I can't keep waiting. I don't know what's happening. And brought them to the factory in South Bronx that we had worked with before. But I lost all of the money that I had paid them. And as a small brand, when you're bootstrapped and you're, funding each production run from the previous production run, it really put a damper on sort of what we were able to do, and the ability to sort of recoup that funds. We never saw the money from that. So I think just really finding partners that you learning lesson, because I like to end on a positive, although I'll share a win too, is just, yeah, really establishing those factory relationships, and really valuing the people that, you've continued to work with and continue to build that partnership with. We now have we moved to Portugal for, they're able to do our fabric and our cut and sew together in one place. And then Europe just naturally, because they have a lot more strict regulations on chemical management and ethical supply chain. They had a lot of the certifications we were looking for. And it wasn't that New York wasn't following some of those rules, but the certification part just wasn't there. And so we continue to do small runs with them occasionally, but Portugal is really our main factory. So anyways, working with a partner that just, that was a really tough part of the business. And I was doing everything from this, my friends always joke, because I was pretty desperate at the time to recoup any kind of money so we could afford to finish the products. And I was trying, the factory ended up having to liquidate, and I was trying to help them sell the old factory, like the sewing machines and all the like machinery on like Craigslist to try to help them make money so that they could pay me back the $5,000 that I had lost. So just a funny, like, kind of, I don't know, you as a small business, you try to sometimes do whatever you can to continue to run the business. So, luckily we made it through that. We ended up selling some other products and kind of working out a deal with the factory, who, again, great partnerships really go a long way. But that was one scary time where I really wasn't sure how we would continue and what we were going to do with all this sort of like unfinished product. On a positive side, we've had some really incredible PR success. So I've worked with a couple small PR agencies, but honestly, a lot of them have been self pitching and just the story and the mission of the brand. And there was a really exciting time where we submitted to Self Magazine as a big activewear ratings awards, and this was in 2022, and we were selected as the best bike short. And it was just cool to see your small brand in a magazine that I know magazines are kind of less relevant these days, but I always grew up reading all of the, Cosmo and Self and Shape on travel and airplanes, and it was really cool to get to see the brand featured. And we've been in Fast Company and both Self and Shape. And a couple other really exciting news outlets. So it's been really fun to see something that, your small business really featured on a large scale like that, and to win an award was definitely one of the many highlights over the last 7 years, but one that sticks out as kind of a fun one.
You know what? That is so awesome to hear because, first of all, congratulations. It is well deserved. And,
Thank you.
there really is nothing like seeing your name or your business name in print. For whatever's being said about print is dead, people don't read magazines. Isn't it funny, though? Any of these, let's say, digital magazines that are out there, they will then offer you a print version like afterwards. Because I've
Oh
been in a
yeah.
lot of those. And they're like, oh, we'll offer you this. You can get this beautifully printed version. And there's always a cost to it. But let me tell you, I always sit there and say, yes, I do want to have that in print, mainly so I can
Yeah.
go home to my parents and be like, there, be proud of me, right? So that whole
Exactly.
print, it makes you feel validated. It makes you feel like it is permanent. So, I can see great things in your future, Mary. It has been such a delight to get to learn, to know more about you and your boxing. And of course, your journey with this company, because it never would have known like how long it took you to get to this point, unless we had talked. And again, I'm so happy that I discovered you through social media. I'm like, wow, she sounds so cool. This business sounds great for the podcast. So,
Love that.
many congratulations and successes I feel are coming your way. So, before we go, please tell everyone where they can find you guys online, how they can get in touch with Reprise, because like I said, it really was a brand that not only spoke to me, but I'm like, yes, I could live in these clothes and outrun zombies.
Key important differentiator. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I love getting to meet new people with the same passions and interests as aligned with the brand, and just another chance to get to share our story is always such an amazing opportunity. So thank you for the time, and excited to be here. Our website is repriseactivewear.com, and it's the same. Instagram is also just at Reprise Activewear, and you can either message us directly. It's me, and we have a couple social media interns who are amazing, and small team, but we always make sure to respond or get back to any messages, or the email is directly through the website as well, which is hello@repriseactivewear.com.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I can't wait to see what's out, in the future for Reprise and for Mary Bemis.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Wow Party podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.